Hello and welcome to episode 154 of Fergo and the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRP. And joining me once again is the sublime League Freak. You can find on Twitter at League Freak. How you going there, mate?
I'm going well. I wasn't expecting sublime.
Well, I had to mix it up a bit. I was worried I was going to fall back to glorious again. I went, there's got to be more words.
It has to be, yeah. I'm pretty sure there's some sort of book. It's not like a dictionary.
I don't need that. I've got the words in my head.
Okay, excellent.
I'm a really good person with lots of really creative words.
Excellent.
As that sentence just proved.
Yeah.
That's a rocky start. Let's keep going.
Yeah, let's push through this.
We got plenty of stories that have come out today in the news. Well, not just today, but in the last few days.
Yeah, a bit of a breaking story as well, which it's cool that we can cover it so quickly.
Yeah, let's dive straight in. So the NRL has struck a deal for a $250 million lifeline from a group of London banks and financial institutions, which is giving the game some financial breathing space and also a bit of leverage in its negotiations with Channel 9. Pretty big news. It is a line of credit. There'll also be some support from the federal government, I believe. So this is going to help the NRL look after clubs who may be struggling a bit more as well.
Yeah.
It also means that the NRL doesn't have to lean on Channel 9 for some early release of funds or whatever it is from the TV rights deal and the like. So it puts Nine in a bit of a precarious position, I'd imagine.
Yeah, because now, Nine was really trying to hold a gun to the game's head and saying, look, we control some of the purse strings anyway, and we're not happy with the situation that we're in. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to basically do what we say. Well, while they've been doing that, the NRL's gone out and got this money. Now, it's interesting that they've loaned this money against future earnings, but I think a lot of places are doing that right now, including the government. So it's not extraordinary. It's not something that's unprecedented. It's what a lot of big companies are doing. But what this really does is it takes any threats from Channel 9 off the table, because the game does have this money to use now to shore up lost income from this year. And it's going to more than cover the lost income from this year, which is fantastic. And it'll help the game through next year as well. If I was Channel 9, I would be a little bit deflated knowing that the NRL secured this deal. And on top of that Fox Sports is really kind of behind the NRL saying, man, we just want any footy to come back. So this is great for the game. It's a reasonable amount of money. I think it's a serviceable amount of money. I wonder what the term of the loan will be. I guess when you get to that sort of amount of money, maybe that they would be looking at quite a long-term loan, but I'm not sure.
According to this article here, that's where the story is broken in the Australian, it says here the money will be secured against future income the sports receives, including broadcast and sponsorship revenue under contract until at least 2022, rather than a particular asset.
Okay.
So it looks like it's only going to be a 3-year loan, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. Although I would guess that they would. I wonder if the NRL. That's a lot of money to pay back that quickly.
You're looking at just over $80 million a year.
Yeah, I wonder if there is maybe a thought amongst the NRL and its clubs that they're going to have a renegotiation of maybe what the salary cap would be. I'd be surprised if that was the case, because I don't think the Players Association would be on side with that. It's an interesting one. I'm glad that they've secured those extra funds. I just can't imagine that they're going to pay it back within 3 years. I feel as though that maybe the way the deal is going to be done, because they know the next TV deal is going to be huge, no matter who it's with.
Maybe that's what they're banking on. Is it just the first year of the new TV rights deal? Just go, right, we're just going to soak up a huge amount of that money there. Instead of giving everyone massive increases,
Mm-hmm.
we're just going to hold it all in and just pay off this debt as quickly as possible. And then we will probably look at expanding in the second year or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And so no NRL club should be, I'd imagine, expecting an increase in the salary cap or the club grant for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and look, if I'm the Players Association, I think about my members getting their basically, I mean, if it's not their entire salary this year, it's going to be a big chunk of it. Even if they do a deal with the Players Association that says we're going to pay out 80% of what players are owed, that's going to be something that they can pay back on that loan, that extra 20% they would have given to players. And if you're the Players Association, you say yes to that deal because you're getting 80%, whereas you're only, what would they get, 35% or something like that as it stands right now. I think it's a good move. I think it's a really good move. And I like that the NRL, instead of being, as I said, held to ransom by a broadcaster, they've gone out and they've said, no, we'll sort this out ourselves. And now the group that's kind of out on its arse a little bit is Channel 9.
Yeah. So the makeup of this loan, it suggests that the NRL will receive $100 million to start with, and they'll have a further $150 million to draw down upon if needed. So if we're talking $100 million, and they'll probably try and stick it as low as they can, then they should be able to clear that in 3 years.
That's way more manageable. And I guess being able to secure the extra $150 million if needed, that allows them to look at if next season is affected as well, I guess, as well.
Yeah. So for all this talk, I need to bring this up. For all this talk that the NRL doesn't have an asset, which the Daily Telegraph was pushing before they're somewhat about face when Channel 9 decided to have an attack on the NRL as well. I said all along, they do have an asset. It's the game. And right here, that's been proven with banks saying, yeah, that is an asset that you can use to borrow $250 million against.
Yeah, at future earnings.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward, really, isn't it?
That's an asset.
Yeah, on top of that, I would suggest, and I talked about this a little bit before, the asset that they've built up with their NRL Digital, which, as we talked about in the last episode, is worth so much more money than they've spent on it. I mean, these banks have obviously looked at the NRL's books and said, man, they're good for it.
Yeah, it almost makes you think that maybe Todd Greenberg and the people at the NRL and the RLC are pretty much doing a pretty decent job.
Yeah, exactly.
I see Peter Volandis has got his face all over the article. I'd like to see him do something. I've knocked him a fair bit, but you know what? I'm still going to give him a crack. Come out and actually do something. Show us what you're doing, because it seems to me like this has been something that the NRL has organised, not something the RLC did. So, I don't know.
I don't know. Like, it's an interesting one. There was a lot of talk that Todd Greenberg wasn't involved in the talks between the ARL and broadcasters. I tend to feel, I get that feel, and it's based on nothing, right? But I just get this feeling that maybe that's what Todd Greenberg was working on, and Peter Volandis would obviously know about it. Like, he hasn't blindsided him or nothing. I wonder if they've done it together on purpose. Because this move would blindside Channel 9. Fox Sports seems to be more in the camp of, like, we want rugby league to be back. Rugby league is important to us. We're open to renegotiating any TV deal, but we're also not going to threaten you like Channel 9 did.
It's kind of funny what's happened with Fox Sports, because it was only a week ago we were talking about how they had, economic mastermind Joey Leilua on there. They had anybody on there they could. Hanging shit on the NRL. They had the whole saga about, the the NRL not being transparent with its funds, and they're spending, so many tens of thousands of dollars per day in this sort of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
They were genuine, attacks on the NRL. But all of a sudden, as soon as Channel 9 pipes up and comes out with a similarly stupid attack of their own,
Mm-hmm.
Fox Sports goes, oh, no, NRL's doing a good job. Just calm down. They're like, fuck, that was a quick turnaround.
It was, and I think that there's two reasons for it. I think number one, it was just because Channel 9's attack was so transparent, you couldn't ignore it. That's the first thing. And I think the second thing was, and it's become clear now in another article that came out in Channel 9's newspaper, the Sydney Morning Herald, that Channel 9's basically looking to use the coronavirus and the pandemic to try and renegotiate their television deal with the NRL. And that would have a big effect on Fox Sports. So what happens right now is Fox Sports shows every single game live, and they simulcast the games that Channel 9 shows on Foxtel Live at the same time. Channel 9 isn't interested in doing that anymore. Channel 9 just wants to show Friday night football and Sunday afternoon football, but they want exclusive rights over those two. And so if I'm Fox Sports, which is News Limited, which is the Daily Telegraph, I'm pretty upset by that, because that is a big change. Like, if Channel 9 wanted to just change their part of the broadcasting deal and it didn't actually have any effect on Fox Sports, they might not have said too much about it. But the fact that Channel 9 wants to renegotiate this whole deal, which still has a few years left on it, and they want to screw over Fox Sports in the process and make sure that Fox Sports has less content than they negotiated to have, I think that is going to put Fox Sports right out of joint. And I think that's why we've seen News Limited come in as full force as they have. And it's kind of weird to see Channel 9 and News Limited going at each other while they're both negotiating with the NRL. And all of a sudden the NRL comes out and it's like, hey, we got $250 million we can now source that has nothing to do with you two. And guess who's in the driver's seat now?
It was very, very intelligent, maybe cunning sort of play by the NRL. It was very good. Tell you what, I'm looking at some of the articles on the Daily Telegraph website about this.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see, when you compare them with the Sydney Morning Herald one, just how this is playing out in the media again. So the Sydney Morning Herald have got Channel 9 outlines vision for preferred NRL future. Channel 9 wants to pay and broadcast less, but are willing to provide for longer as part of discussions with the NRL. Sounds somewhat like there's, it's got a somewhat positive sort of inflection on the way it's reported.
Yeah.
And the Daily Telegraph says, no, I want to wipe the NRL from 2020 broadcast.
Yeah, and look, that's something that was even in the Sydney Morning Herald article that I read earlier. I think Channel 9 doesn't want there to be rugby league this year. I think that's pretty clear. It's going to save them $100 million plus. And I think that the fact that the NRL is looking to go ahead with plans, and look, we've seen Channel 9 is, I don't even think during Super League, I mean, there was some attacks from News Limited against the ARL that were vicious. They were full on. I think that these ones are at least on par with them. You know, they've been vicious.
The problem with these ones is they're very obvious. They're very vicious. They're very clear.
Yeah.
But they're also a bit hypocritical.
Very. And the other thing is too, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you like in the game, who you dislike, who you think is running it poorly, whatever. None of those people are going to turn around and say, you know what? Yeah, the better deal is just not to play rugby league again this year. Like, even the old hags that bag the NRL every single week on Fox Sports, they don't really want the game to not be played.
No.
And so you've got Channel 9 just on its own. I mean, we know that for Fox Sports, having NRL played is beyond critical, not just for Fox Sports, but for Foxtel in general.
Yeah.
So they're like, they're going to be saying any football, just give us something. We'll take anything at this stage. And we'll negotiate it from there. But just get up and running as soon as you can. If Channel 9's on the other side and they're saying, well, we're not sure you should play footy again this year, and yeah, it'll save us $100+ million, and we want to, going forward, pay you less money, but for longer. Man, Channel 9's really between a bit of a rock and a hard place here, because at the end of the day, if the NRL enforced a legal term, and I think it was, I can't remember the name of it, but they enforced a legal term that happens if there's a natural disaster of some sort or a pandemic that stops them from being sued in the case that they can't play games. Mm-hmm. So they've enforced that. So it's not as though the broadcasters can now take them to court, because that's part of the contract that they signed, that they could enforce this clause. But if Channel 9 decides that they don't want to honour their contract once rugby league starts up again, the NRL can take Channel 9 to court. And if the NRL has this money backing them and they take Channel 9 to court, and they can also resell Channel 9's part of the rights to one of the other, Channel 10 or Channel 7, this really screws Channel 9. Channel 9 are in a bad place now.
Yeah. Channel 9 are trying to lowball the NRL, and given the package they've got includes grand final, final series, state of origin, as well as, primetime Friday night. I don't know if that's the sort of thing, given how much publicity they get out of that and how much advertising revenue they get out of those games, and how many eyeballs they get on their channel for that. I don't know if that's something you want to try and lowball with, because I dare say that I think it's CBS-backed Channel 10 will probably look at it and go, we'll take it.
Yeah, and I mean, Channel 10 is in a terrible position. I mean, just the fact that they're owned by CBS is the only reason they still exist, because they were going out the door and CBS come in, bought them cheap, and they run them on the cheap, quite honestly. And that's fair enough. They don't generate enough money to do anything else. You bring in, the highest rated sport in Australia, and even just state of origin alone, the biggest entertainment property in Australia. You've got you can have the lead into a 6 p.m. news bulletin on a Sunday afternoon. That alone is something. Sets up your whole primetime Sunday night.
This is the other thing, though, about this deal that might pique the interest of CBS, and that is, there's a fair chance that if this game, if NRL goes ahead in May as it's planning to, and still bugger all sport around the rest of the world, the NRL will be being relayed via Fox into the US.
Mm-hmm.
And that market is going to have rugby league as its only major sport to watch. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on it, because there's going to be a lot of people wanting to watch sport, and they'll turn in and watch it going, let's check out this thing because I need to see something. And if that starts to get some good ratings there and people start watching it, CBS might go, we need to get onto this.
Yeah, and look, if they've then entered into because they would have entered into a deal with Fox Sports at that point to simulcast games together, as Channel 9 does now, it's not a huge step to say, well, look, let's do something in our US market, because we're both desperate for content in the US market in terms of having sport of some sort on. So, yeah, wow, it's a big, big development. I'm so glad that it has happened before we started podcasting, because I think if we had podcasted and this had happened afterwards, it kind of changes everything. It changes absolutely everything.
Absolutely. The ball is now back in the court of the NRL.
Yeah, they basically get to sit down with Channel 9 and say, we've got a deal with you. You either you know, you go through with this deal, or we'll take you to court and we'll sell what your part of the deal with the backing of Fox Sports to another free-to-air broadcaster. And let's see how you do when, Channel 7 or Channel 10 is showing State of Origin.
Now, got another story for you here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to read you the byline, I guess. Okay. It's from the Daily Telegraph. It was from 4 hours ago, so it's also another sort of new one. Rugby Union could turn to the NRL to save their game. Rugby Australia will have their greatest rival to thank if the latest radical proposal to get the struggling 15-man code back up and running comes to fruition. But the left field plan may not be enough to save Raelene Castle. And my question to you is, we're not even going to bother to read this article. What do you think the radical proposal could be that Rugby Union has up its sleeve that involves the NRL to save their game?
I know what I would do, right? Which we've talked about before. The NRL takes over Rugby Union basically in Australia and runs it, but it takes over the running of it. Basically becomes the rugby, in quotes, organisation in Australia. My guess is what they're proposing is the old let's play the Kangaroos versus the Wallabies bullshit that no one actually wants to see. Is that what it is?
No, I don't know. I thought I'd throw it out there. I'm not going to bother clicking on it to find out what the story is.
Yeah, that's my guess, they're looking at that. But look, if I was Rugby Union in Australia and I look at the way that the NRL is now this juggernaut, they've just been able to loan $250 million. They've been able to loan $250 million. Rugby Union in Australia could not do that, okay? If I'm Rugby Union in Australia and I know I'm not going to win the battle for juniors, very rarely am I going to win the battle to get an elite player to stay in Australian Rugby Union over Australian Rugby League, and then I'm losing any elite Australian Rugby Union players overseas as well. I wonder if you've got to look at it. You've got to at least talk about it, maybe in very whispered, around the corners of buildings. You got to say, what if the NRL just took over and funded us $50 million a year? Those sorts of things. It's really interesting.
They could do we'll go for a little quick journey here down history.
Mm-hmm.
They could possibly look at doing a Kangaroos v Wallabies one-off game, because they did play 4 games in 1909, and it was tied 2-2. So you could argue we need a decider. It's been 110 years without knowing who won the series. We need a decider.
That's funny. The problem is they'd lose. I think that they'd lose playing with rugby league players playing rugby union.
How would you do it? Let's argue it. Okay,
let's have some fun. So this is the way I do it from rugby league side, right? Say Mal Meninga is going to be the coach.
Mm-hmm.
I would, if I'm Mal Meninga, I get in a couple of actual rugby union coaches, and then I look at everybody that's in the Australian rugby league system that's an Australian player that has a rugby union background, and they're the players I select.
Yeah.
So there might be some, I think, say on the wing and things like that, like a Josh Adokar you wouldn't worry about, I think a James Tedesco at fullback you wouldn't worry about, that sort of thing. I think being rugby league, being the sport that's in the far dominant position, I'm getting a lot of my rules anyway, and if the rugby union doesn't like it, they can go jump. So I think a lot of it would be in rugby league's favour in terms of the rules and stuff anyway, but in terms of the players that rugby league would use, even if you're just playing rugby union, you'd get people with rugby union backgrounds and like heavy rugby union backgrounds as well. If we're playing league, I'd just pick the best team and they'd win by, oh my goodness, they could win by 70, 80 points.
Should they play one game? Or would you have one game of league and one game of union?
I think that broadcasters would say, what's better than one? Two.
Exactly. And you might end up with a drawn series if you go to 2, so we might as well have a series of 3. But then, what would the third game be, though? Half and half?
Andrew, duck, goose. Okay. No, look, the thing where it falls down if they went down this route is rugby league doesn't need to do it. And rugby union would be desperate for something. I think the big problem they've got, and I haven't said, I know that the rugby union in Australia has just come to an agreement with its players over a pay deal. Now, I haven't looked into that. It's only just happened tonight, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But the rugby union players were looking to be able to get out of their contracts for 2020 and to take up contracts in other competitions. Now, the fact that there are no other rugby union competitions around, and the only rugby union competition, or rugby competition, that looks like it's going to start anytime soon is the NRL. And we've seen Quade Cooper has been in the paper recently saying he wants to play for the Parramatta Eels. He's not going to get a place in the Parramatta Eels. I'm very sorry, Quade, but he's out saying he wants to play rugby league and fulfill a lifelong dream, and fair enough. That's what, he wants to do.
Can I hit you with a poser?
Yeah.
You've got to pick between Clint Gutherson and Quade Cooper.
I take Clint Gutherson 1,000 times out of 1,000.
That's good.
I take long-haired Clint Gutherson. I take shaved-head Clint Gutherson.
What about weird facial hair Clint Gutherson?
Weird facial hair, Fu Manchu Clint Gutherson. I take one hand tied behind his back Clint Gutherson. I take Clint Gutherson on half pace. And he's already half pace.
There you go. I can't see which team's going to sign Quade Cooper.
It would have to be something like,
part of the problem too is he's not going to come. We're not even going to get into criticising the way he performs or anything like that. We're going to have a situation where he's not going to come to the game expecting to be paid $100,000 a year. He's going to come across expecting to be paid top dollar.
See, I don't think he would, hey?
I think he would do.
I feel like he kind of knows that it's a chance to play rugby league, which he said he's wanted to do for forever. And I feel like he would take the chance and take I don't think he's going to take $100,000 either. But I think if he started going over, say, $250,000, which isn't a big contract for NRL players, I think clubs would start saying, yeah, wait, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. What else we got on here? Oh, this is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
The NRL brings in top biochemical and weapons expert for season restart.
Now, we just did like a 4-hour podcast. We had the lovely Julie on with us. She was great to talk to.
Hey, Julie.
Hey, Julie. Hey. We had a really good rugby league discussion with her. And during it, I said, this is like saying my family has the flu. So I've called in a fumigator to sort it out. That's basically what this is.
It's alarmism and sensationalism at its absolute finest. They've all come together in one here.
Yeah, the only way I could see that it would have any sort of validity is maybe the person has a background in decontamination. That's the only thing I can think of.
The dumbest thing ever.
It's so weird. some of the how bad has the media been overall? I'm not even just talking about rugby league. I'm talking for everything.
Oh yeah.
Over the last, say, month, it has been crazy.
I sense though with the Australian media and the coronavirus stuff that there's been dabs of alarmism, but they're forcefully holding themselves back. You can just see they want to go full moron.
Yeah.
But they're just holding themselves back going, oh, we probably can't. You go, wow, the media's starting to get a little bit of a conscience.
You know, I saw, you say that, right? I saw on a current affair today.
Hang on. They are not the media.
I know. I was hate watching it, all right? They had a reporter that had parked a car outside of a closed op shop that people were putting stuff outside of. And this reporter, I'm sure they taught this as lesson at reporter school, journalism school, he was yelling out his car window at someone putting stuff outside an op shop, saying, that's illegal, you know. You've parked in a no parking spot too. They're so bad.
Socially responsible reporting. That.
It was so funny. But yeah, the media's been terrible. And, you know, if you're feeling down, you got to turn it off. It's just, otherwise you get angry. I get angry watching it.
Yeah. Speaking of the media, let's keep going.
Okay.
Latrell Mitchell facing fresh contract saga at South.
Now, who wrote that?
That was written in the Sydney Morning Herald.
Okay.
So it wasn't James Hooper, which was surprising.
Wow. He got scooped?
Yeah, I think maybe Hoops was probably still trying to figure out how balance sheets work.
Now tell our listeners about that, because I am just looking up, because I found it. Keep going.
It says the Rabbitohs need to make a call on the future of their star fullback who's played just 2 games for the club. Well, of course he has. He's only been there this year.
For 2 games. Yeah. He's played every single game.
He's only played 2 games and the game's been going on since March. What's going on? So now the Channel 9 mob are sitting there pushing the James Hood ornament articles.
Now, the good news is,
yeah,
Matt Logue, who follows me on Twitter.
Oh, he's a good man.
Yeah. South Sydney agreed to extend Latrell Mitchell's contract. When was your article from? What time?
I don't know when. Let's see.
Does it have a time on there?
Oh, man. That's brilliant. It was almost 2 days ago.
Okay. This was at April 14th at 7:06 p.m.
That's literally 24 hours after this one.
Yeah. So, it's crazy. It's so fucking crazy.
I think we're going to see a bit more of this. One newspaper saying one thing, the other one saying the other. There was another one today which was about, I think, a suggestion that the Sydney Morning Herald's Danny Weidler had made that Wayne Bennett had been in talks with Nick Politis.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Fox Sports came out with, it actually went and asked Wayne Bennett, and he said, no, I haven't spoken to him since 2006. And he went, I never thought I'd see the day when Fox Sports and News Limited were fact-checking and giving the actual correct answers to what was going on with the Sydney Morning Herald. What sort of obverse bloody universe is this?
You know, it's really weird though. Like, how do you screw something like that up? And because, say you can talk to, you got to either talk to Nick Politis or Wayne Bennett, right? And so how do you screw that up? Like, don't you ask one of them and say, did this happen? And they're obviously going to say no.
Yeah. It's pretty stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you don't report stuff on hearsay. You couldn't.
No. But they're just mad.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that was funny, though.
It was. My understanding was Wayne Bennett was not he was like, nah. You know?
Yeah. You made it pretty clear it was a lot of garbage.
Yeah.
Now,
It's Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, you finish what you're saying there.
It's a very interesting time, isn't it?
It really is. And now we've got two major media outlets bickering at one another.
It's weird. It's like the Super League war. It's like the very, very start of the Super League war when they started sniping at one another. But the game isn't being torn apart. The game is like never been stronger.
Maybe we could dub this the Super Journalist War.
The Super Journalist War, please. I don't want to have to buy another fucking, website address. I already own fucking dozens of them. Oh, man. You remember when we bought those website addresses, by the way? Man, I'm paying for them now. Jeez. Yeah, it's interesting. You know what's really weird? When you read the reporting in the Sydney Morning Herald, which is owned by Channel 9, there'll be half-truths and stuff like that which get debunked by the NRL and, funnily enough, by News Limited. But then they keep their subsequent articles just keep using those same lines like they're a fact when they're just not. So you can read through some of their articles and you can go 3-4 paragraphs deep, and it's like, well, all of this stuff is being debunked.
Yeah, it's almost like they found News Limited's secret plan on how to produce your own content without actually doing any work, and they've gone, oh, we should do this.
Yes. Now this brings me to the famous now Phil Gould interview on Channel 9, in which Phil Gould, the Channel 9 employee, goes on Channel 9 to explain to Channel 9 how Channel 9 is right and the NRL is wrong. And midway through the interview, he's asked about Phil Rothfield's comments, and he says something like, oh, I don't listen to anything he says, something along those lines. And so now Phil Rothfield, who had said Phil Gould's been a hypocrite, then responds back to Phil Gould about his interview on Channel 9 that was hitting back his article about Phil Gould, agreeing with Channel 9, but he's now saying it on Fox Sports and News Limited. Now, you and me wrote an Inception article last year that was a piss take, right?
Yes.
Where I agreed with Laurie Daly, and he agreed with somebody else.
Paul Green.
Yep, and then you wrote an article saying you agreed with me, and it was just like, we called it article Inception. This blows us out the water. Like, we could never have gone this deep.
Yeah, this is insane. All I could think of when I heard you explaining very perfectly how this is all going down, it just comes across like two old men in a nursing home fighting over the last can of baked beans.
Yeah, and they really haven't liked each other for a long time, but they've been cordial at times when they've had to be, when they've met for, like, at the, Werther's Butter Menthol tin, or, whenever.
Over a dry sherry.
Yeah, they've gone up for a sherry at the same time, and they've been, courteous, kind of like, remember Seinfeld's dad? He was always courteous with people.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know this, on Wolf of Wall Street, where the guy's dad, he sits down to watch his favourite TV show, and when somebody rings just as it's starting, he gets up out of his chair and he's like, who the fuck is calling right now? And then he picks up the telephone and he speaks with a posh accent and he goes, oh, hello, Gene. Yes, very well. How are you? It's just that sort of thing,
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Now, there has been some sad news in the rugby league world. Nothing traumatic, just a little bit sad. Braithen Astor has revealed he underwent a coronavirus test after feeling a little bit sick on the eve of the Easter break, and he said it was intimidating and uncomfortable. Now, let's just have a moment's thought here for Braith.
Now, first of all, I gotta say something. Well, first of all, let's have a moment's silence for Braith.
Okay. That's long enough.
Yeah. Now, the first thing is when they do this test, right?
Mm.
They get a cotton wool bud, and to be fair, it's a long one. That's what she said. And they put it right.
It is.
They put it right in the back of your nose.
Oh.
They wiggle it around, right? And it's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable.
Does it touch your brain?
No, but it feels like it. Like it goes back. I've heard it explained that it goes far enough back into your nasal cavity that it's like back as far as your ear. Okay, so it goes in deep. Right?
Okay. That's what she said.
Now, my first thought was that any female that's listening to Braith and Nas to complain about something going that far inside their head is thinking, shut up, Braith. Grow up.
Yeah. Poor Braith. I mean, he had to buy his own Gatorade, his own strapping tape, and now he's had to have a Q-tip put in his nostril.
It would suck.
It's been a hard life for Braith.
Braith and Nasta's got a fair-sized nose too, like
although it is conducive to a good coronavirus test because it is nice and long and straight.
Yeah. Did he never got his nose broken, did he?
Nah, he got his face smashed in by David Kidwell once, didn't he? And then got penalised for being punched.
It wasn't David Kidwell. It was who was it? It wasn't Kidwell.
Oh,
I could see the dude's face. Oh, who was it? But yeah, that was a classic moment in the game, and kind of crazy too, eh?
Yeah. Like if it had been any other player, people would have been up in arms because of Braith. People just sort of go, "That's funny."
I remember when that happened. I actually liked Braith and Asta. I think Braith and Asta. First of all, I love his commentary. I think he.
Don't get me wrong. I think he adds great comedic value. He just doesn't realise it.
I've always said Brian Noble was good at satire, but Braith and Asta's right up there, right? And he's the highest point scorer for a single game in International Rugby League's history, equal highest point scorer. So he's one of the greats.
Yeah, he is.
But yeah, man, he was intimidated by a Q-tip.
Yep. No surprises there.
Do you reckon you could intimidate someone with a Q-tip?
Only Braith.
But just say, right, okay, here's a question, because I don't like going to the dentist, okay? If, say they put you in a dentist chair and strapped your head down to that chair and then come at you with a Q-tip and said, we're going to put this right down your nose, that'd suck, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's not how they do this test. I'm sure they just say, look, this is going to suck. And then they shove it into your nasal cavity. But it's still, I don't think I'd call that intimidating. I'd just call it uncomfortable.
Yes, for a few seconds.
Yeah. As I said before,
say,
man, you wouldn't want to be in a foxhole with him.
You'd say, Braith, you're at the West Tigers for a few years. This is only going to take a few seconds. You've been through worse.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man.
Yeah, you had to buy your own strapping tape. I'm sure you can handle this.
Anyone that's had to buy their own Gatorade.
Yeah, they've done it hard in life.
Really have.
You can remember the back in my day stories that Braith left to tell. I had to go to the corner shop and had to deal with people saying, hey, aren't you that bloke who used to play for the Roosters? And then I had to use this money stuff to buy drinks and stuff. I should be getting it for free. I'm Braith fucking Anasta. And the kids are going, oh, poor grandpa. It'd be worse than any war story you'll ever hear.
I reckon
tears. It'd be shaking. His voice would be quivering. Anyway. What other news we got here? Yeah, we had the two dinosaurs bitching about one another.
I don't think there's been too much.
There was something else I was going to think of. Oh, yeah, that's right. Nick Politis has suggested that if the comp is to restart, then the first 2 rounds should be wiped.
Oh, that's right.
I'd like to say to Nick Politis, no.
Yeah, and I don't think. I think that they've looked at every scenario, as we've said a few times, and I think that was shelved pretty quickly. There was really only Nick Politis in the game that was interested in going down that road.
May I ask you a obvious question?
Yeah.
If the Roosters had won their first 2 games of the season, do you think Nick Politis would still be pushing forward for that same same request?
No.
There you go. I think that sums it up pretty clearly. What else have we got on here? There's not much else, really. Paul Kent has come out and said it's time to play league and not politics. There's a first time for everything. Yeah, first time for everything. It seems like Paul Kent has decided he wants to see rugby league again, because I think the last time he saw any rugby league was 1990, probably somewhere around there.
Yeah.
When he played it.
Yeah. It was a good time, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was a time.
It's so weird. It's like all of this has been, look, if you wanted to take like your rugby league fandom off and you took a step back, you'd say, man, this has all been very entertaining. I think the interesting thing that has come out of all of this is that, and it's something that people need to remember, the game has never been stronger. The game has never been as well funded. The game has never been in a stronger position as it is now. It's kind of crazy that we're seeing so much, and I can't think of any other word than propaganda to try and talk down the administration of the game. And look, we're the game's administrators' biggest critics, you and me, right? But at least we will focus on something and say, we don't like this happening and this is why. There's a lot of just fluff and bullshit being chucked out by the media right now about the administration of the game and even just where the game is health-wise. And it's quite extraordinary to see it. And the interesting thing is that even in a time when the game isn't being played and it's not able to generate money, like a lot of other businesses, it's still in a much stronger position than it has been at many other times in its history.
Absolutely. That's what baffles me so much about people wanting to hate on the NRL and how it's been run for so long. It's just utter madness. Hopefully, we do get to see a big shake-up in the TV rights.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be very, very interesting to see what happens with Channel 9.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would be surprised if they're in a slightly worse financial situation than's been made out, because, you know, as we discussed in the pre-episode, Channel 9 has given away Test cricket, which they had for so long. It was a huge thing for them, and in return took up a 2-week tennis tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Albeit they'll probably get really good ratings for those 2 weeks, but it's not several months that Test cricket was, and they probably saved a lot of money in the process. And same again, if they lowball rugby league, they're a real chance of losing it, and maybe that's something that they want to do because they don't have to spend the money anymore, because maybe they need that money for, deal with their debts. This is just speculation. It's not based on fact. I'm just, hypothesizing, I guess.
Look, I can see from a business side of things, if you got to a point where your year is in tatters anyway, and you can save 100 and something million, I think it was 120 million that it was said that they could save. I could see where you might make the business decision that that's the way to go. But when it's at the expense of a contract that you've signed, and it opens you up to litigation, I mean, Man, it's a risk, and especially if it opens you up to litigation, and at the same time opens you up to competitors taking some of your prized content at a time when content is just so valuable, so valuable. It's not a risk I'd be taking, you know.
No, but Channel 9 aren't exactly behaving in normal fashion. And I'm not just talking about now, I'm talking about in the last few years. Trying to Test cricket, that is huge content. And it's possibly the only major content that's worth watching on free-to-air TV during summer.
True. And look, and they gave it up. They just were so, they gave it up meekly, which was kind of weird to me. And especially seeing, I mean, they more than being a rugby league station, because they've never been a rugby league station. They were always the cricket station,
That's
for
right.
years and years. And to give it up the way they did was kind of a little bit of a shock. But then you could say, look, it's not over the ratings period, and cricket's becoming a little bit fractured and things like that. I also wonder about the demographics that cricket hits on. I think when you look at the sport in Australia, I question the demographics that it hits. But, and rugby league, there's people say things about the demographics of rugby league as well. But, man, when you have like the top 5 most watched shows, 4 of them are rugby league, demographics go out the window. Everyone's watching it.
That's right.
So I just can't imagine any TV station saying we don't want that this year. If that's not what you're into, what is your business?
Exactly right. Do you think Channel 7 would take rugby league on, given they've already got AFL and Test cricket?
I don't know that they'd have the slots for it. If they had the time slots that they could have it on, I think they would. But I just don't think they'd have the time slots available. And I would suggest that AFL has it pretty much locked in, that they've got to show their games live on their main channel in Sydney Friday nights and whenever else they play. I don't know when they play. I don't care.
Well, I mean, they've all got these other subsidiary channels now, but most of the draw is dictated upon by what the TV networks want to put on there. So if Channel 7 said, right, if you can have an NRL game on Friday night, just one every Friday night from 6 till 7:30, 8 o'clock, we can then have the rugby league lead into the AFL. We have an AFL game kick off at 8 p.m. And so that would just change the way the NRL would work, I dare say, and what times they kick off.
That's an interesting one. Look, I guess if we're putting together a patchwork quilt season from here on in, right? If we're playing each other once or however it's going to happen, you and me tend to think that they'll play 20 more games or thereabouts. You've got the ability to mix up your time zones and stuff like that. If you need to come to an agreement with a new broadcaster, I think Fox Sports will just be like, write us down for what we usually get, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of you've got a Thursday night game, which is Channel 9. You got the Friday night game, which is Channel 9. You got the Sunday night game, afternoon game, which is Channel 9. I guess you've got the ability to play with when that Sunday afternoon game kicks off. And because we're looking for the most money, I could see where maybe Channel 7 says, look, we wouldn't mind that game at 6:30. And at this point for rugby league, you're not playing in front of stadiums anyway. It's 6 p.m. on a Sunday night, you'll take it, right? The Thursday night game, they might say, look, what if we had that on after it's Sunday night? What if we had that on, kicking off at 8:30? I think everything's on the table. So if Channel 9 couldn't fulfill their end of the contract, I think everything is available, and, it's really, really interesting. And the NRL's in the driver's seat.
They certainly are, through good management.
Yeah, really, really good management. And this loan deal, man, that's a smart move. That has really put the pressure on Channel 9. I really do. I think that Fox Sports has been pretty chilled through all of this, and they're like, man, just get footy back on and we'll worry about it later. Channel 9's been an agitator, and it's time for them to settle down now.
Yeah. This is going to be an interesting week.
It really, really is. I'm really looking forward to it. It's funny, by this time next week, we could have talked about 4 different scenarios, and we might be saying, and rugby league is on SBS.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Can you imagine? Leading with Iron Chef. Oh, yeah. That's so bad.
And then it could lead into Iron Chef as well. Just have Iron Chef either side of it.
Iron Chef Rugby League edition.
Just have a Rugby League Iron Chef sandwich.
That would be brilliant. In fact, that's just the perfect night, if you ask me.
Imagine the cross promotions.
It'd be brilliant.
All right, we're just content kings. We know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, have we had any emails?
No.
No. Okay. Any shout-outs?
Shout out to Julie. It was really nice talking to her before. We had a really good discussion about rugby league clubs and who was the best club in the world. It ended up being the Salford Red Devils. We used a very, very... we actually ran the algorithm past you. It was pretty good, eh?
Yeah, that's all on... that's all on Julie's head.
And so, yeah, shout out to her. Shout out to my Patreons. It's fantastic. I know, Salford Red Devils. Yeah, that's it. Shout out to my Patreons.
Your Patreon.
Yep. Patreon.com/LeagueFreak is my Patreon. Go and have a look at it. Just go and have a look at it. That's all I'm saying. Just go and have a look at it. Any money that I get from that goes straight into website hosting, my email hosting, and podcasting equipment. So tell us about your Patreon.
Yeah, mine's patreon.com/RL Project. It's pretty much paying for... essentially, the goal is to be able to work on Rugby League Project full time. Mm-hmm. Because it's at a point now where that needs to happen. There's so much work that's coming into that website. We've got some New Zealand provincial results are going to be coming in soon, and that's going to be the precursor to a whole heap of club games in New Zealand being added to the website over the next few years. Mm-hmm. There's a whole, every single club game in England is also going to be added as well. It's going to more than double what's currently on the website as far as number of games on there goes. So, huge amount of stuff. We've actually got, at the moment now, over 1,000 teams in the database.
That's crazy.
So, there's just so much work on there. And that's the thing. We're not putting parameters on it, so it just keeps going wider and wider and bigger, and we'll just let it keep going. So, yeah, the ultimate goal is to get paid a standard enough monthly wage so I can pay my bills and feed my family, pretty much.
Yeah.
And run the website too, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, get on there, and you can donate anything from as low as $1 a month to, anything you like.
Yeah, and get on it. It's a great service for rugby league and one that we really need for the game, I think.
Yeah, I'm finding there's plenty of people using it at the moment. The hits are going through the roof, so...
Oh, really? That's awesome.
People are a bit bored.
Hey, that reminds me. Go and check out leaguefreak.com. I put up a article, and it was titled, "This is where the NRL's money went." And I linked up all of the annual reports on there. It got a lot of traction. I got a lot of traffic from that one. It's probably the best, or the most well-received article that I've written for a while, and it felt like the first time I've really sat down and written an article that's I guess is one of my articles that where I'll grab a coffee, I'll smash it, and I just sit down and type out like a crazy man. I haven't done that for quite a while now. It's probably been about a year or so since I've done that. So check it out, have a look at it. I went through some of the questions that have been asked in the media and tried to answer some of them. So I think you'll enjoy that.
Absolutely. We should actually add that into the show notes, I guess.
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we say we all mean you.
I can do that right now.
There you go. So, yeah, check those out. Check us out on Twitter at FergoFreakPod. Also on Instagram at FergoFreakPod. We're on Facebook. Yeah, you can contact us over there if you like to. Twitter's where we always are, so you hit us up on there whenever you like. Drop us an email at
podcast@leaguefreak.com.
Get into that. Send us some emails. We've been reading them out, so you've got nothing better to do with your time at the moment. You're stuck at home, want something to do. Send us some ideas of stuff you'd like us to talk about, perhaps.
Yeah, and what we might do too coming up is when we'll do this through Twitter, I'll post a tweet up before on the day that we're going to record, and we'll get you to send in questions. So don't do that yet until you see the tweet, because we'll just read the replies to that tweet. So yeah, that'll be a good little bit of fun.
Absolutely. I suppose on that note, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Yeah, and we'll catch you next time.